before we add the functionality for earning achievements, I would like to give the buttons here some functionality as well, because I would like to be able to switch between the different categories before we actually start earning the achievements. So to do that, we need to add a new script to our game by going to the script folder, right clicking, pressing create, and then picking a C# script. And this script is just going to be called achievement button. So this script needs to go on to the general button and the other button. So click on other button, go to search and write achievement button, select that, and do the same for the general button. So now they both have the script on them, and this script is gonna control whenever we pick one of these categories, and then it's gonna show the correct category in here inside the mask here. So double click on the script to open it, and when the script is open, we need to add some fields to it. First of all, we need the field that gives the button a reference to the menu or the list of achievements it needs to show. So public game object called category list or something. Actually called achievement list. Achievement list. So this is the list of achievement that we should show. And then we need two sprites, public sprite, neutral, and sprite highlight. So why do we need sprites when we already have the sprites in the button? Well, I want to add a little extra functionality to the button, because when I play my game, you'll see that whenever I pick a category here and I click anywhere else, it disables the color, so it goes back to neutral. And I want to be able to say that I want to click the other category, and if I click anywhere else, I should still be able to see that I'm under the other category by having this button highlighted at all times until I click on the general button or click on the other again or something. So what I have to do is to add two sprites so that I can always switch between them whenever I want to and not when Unity wants to. Besides that, we need to create a function called awake, void awake. And the reason that I use awake is because it's called before start. So if we have any dependencies on something else in start, we could call it in awake to make sure that everything is set up before we call it in start. So I just like to put it in awake here. Besides that, we also need to make a reference to the image. So private image. And again, if you don't have the Unity UI up here, right click on image, press resolve, and then implement Unity engine.ui. If you don't have Visual Studio, you can write this line of code yourself by writing using Unity engine.ui. So private image and call sprite. And down here I'm going to make a reference to the image on the sprite. So if we compare it here, we'll see we have our general button. On the general button we have an image here, and this image decides the looks of this button, and that's the one we are making a reference to right now inside our script. So we say sprite that is equal to get component image. So now we have a reference to our image so that we can change it from within our code. And basically we just want to make a new function here called public void click. And if the button is clicked, well, then we're gonna say if sprite.sprite. So the sprite on the image here, if that is equal to neutral, if the neutral is clicked, well, then we need to change the sprite equal to highlight, because if it's neutral and we click it, we need to change to highlight, and then we need to say that our achievement list here that set active is true, because when we click it the first time, if our sprite is neutral, then it's the first time we click it, and we need to highlight it and we need to show the category that this button is managing. So achievement list that set active basically shows the category that the button is managing. And then we can make an else statement that says if sprite.sprite equals neutral. Not if, but we are going to make it neutral, because if this one is not true, if it's not neutral, well, then it should be highlighted, and if we click a button when it's highlighted, then we should set it to neutral, and achievement list that set active false. Okay, and then we can save this and jump back into Unity. And back in Unity we need to set up the button. So select your general button and then go take the achievement list from under the achievement mask here called general and drag it onto the achievement list object here, so you know the general button is managing the general achievements. And the other button needs to do the same, so select the other button and take the other and drag onto this position so that the other button manages the other achievements. Besides that, we need to set the sprite, so the neutral sprite should just be the normal one it has, button, menu button neutral, and the highlight sprite should be the highlighted. And the same goes for the other button. Just select it and then select the two sprites according to the name. When we've done that, we need to create a method inside our achievement manager to handle these buttons, because I don't want the button to have the responsibility of everything. I want the achievement manager to have this responsibility. So if we go back into our script achievement manager here, then we need to create a new function called change category. So underneath your set achievement info, you can write public void change category, and this function is basically going to take in a game object called button. So we're going to call this function when we click a button, and then it's going to say achievement button equals button, this game object we get here, dot get component achievement button. So this function is going to be called whenever we click a button. So let's just go out and fix it right away. So in our general button, click on the plus side here. So when we click the button, we need to call a function here. So click on click, take the achievement manager and drag onto this position here. And when you do that, then you can actually pick the functions on this game object here. So you can pick what function should be triggered when you click the button. And the function I want to be triggered when I click the button is the change category. So you go to achievement manager here, and then you have to find the change category button here. Okay, I can't find it because I didn't save, so I need to go back into my script and save. And then I need to go back into Unity, click general, go to achievement manager, and then I should be able to find change category here. Yes. So as you can see here, I have selected the change category, and it asks for a game object because inside my function here I told it to take in one game object, which is the button that I just clicked, so that I can handle that inside my change category. So take the general button and drag onto this, do the same with the other, click on plus, take the achievement manager, click on the function, go to game object, not game object, achievement manager of course, and change category, and drag the other button itself onto this spot here, so that the achievement manager always knows which button that you just pressed. To make sure that you don't lose anything, just remember to save your scene. Just gonna call it base or something, and I'm just gonna save the project as well. So before we actually start pressing these buttons, we need to be aware of something, because whenever we need to scroll inside this area here, well, then we need to reassign the scroll rate, because if we click on the achievement mask, you'll see that it has a scroll rate on it, and this scroll rate is right now connected to the general tab here, the general category. As you can see, the content of the scroll rate here is selected as the general, so which means that when we scroll inside this achievement mask, it will scroll the general category. But if I click on the other button, I would like this content here to change from the general into the other, so that I can swap around in the correct category. So when I open the other and I have a lot of achievements I need to scroll on, well, then I need to scroll through the other achievements instead of the general achievements. So we also need to consider that when we create some more functionality inside this function. So jump back into your script and go to your change category function, because we actually need to add some functionality. Actually, we need to do something in our fields before we actually add something here. So scroll up again, and up here in the fields we need to add two things. We need to add a button, which is the active button, because when we have clicked the button, the Achievement Manager needs to know what category we have selected. So we're going to create a button and set it to active button, so whenever I click a button, I'm going to tell the Achievement Manager that this is the active button, so that we can always switch to a new category. Because the Achievement Manager needs to know what category is active at the moment to know if it needs to switch category or not. So public achievement button called active button, and then we also need a public scroll rect. So this one is going to have a reference to the current active button. Actually, I'm going to make this private. There's no point in making it public. And this is going to have a reference to the current scroll rect, so that we can always switch it around. So basically, I want to make sure that the scroll rect is set from the get-go. So if I save this and jump back out to Unity, I can select my Achievement Manager here. Then the scroll rect pops up down here in the bottom. So to assign the scroll rect, I just need to take my achievement mask and then pull it onto here, and then it automatically gets the scroll rect connect to the achievement mask. So if I jump back into my game, or into my script here, I can go all the way down to my change category function, and in here I need to add a few lines of code. I need to say scroll rect dot content equals active achievement button dot achievement list, because we're taking the button we just clicked and we are accessing the list, which is the list of achievements that this button is managing. So we click the button and we want to get all the achievements that it's managing, which could be the general category or the other category, and then we're gonna get component rect transform, because the scroll rect needs a rect transform. So this line of code basically makes sure that whenever I click one of these buttons here, it will take this achievement mask, go to the scroll rect, take the content, and then take and pull the correct category here into this slot here, so that we know what we control. So the next thing we need to do is to make sure that achievement button dot click is called, and then we're going to call active button dot click, because we want to change the sprites, right? So when I call achievement button dot click, well, then it's going to call this function in here from our achievement button script, and then it's going to say if the sprite is neutral, well, then we change the sprite to highlight, and then we make sure that we show our category, so the sprite knows that it needs to show the category it's managing. Or else, if it wasn't active, well, then it's going to set it to neutral, or if it was active, it's going to set it as neutral, and then it's going to hide the category it was showing just before. And that's why we need to do it on both of them, to make sure that the button we had active before clicks itself out if it doesn't need to show the stuff anymore, and the button that we just clicked clicks itself in. And when this is done, we need to say active button equals clicked, what's it called, achievement button, that's what it's called. So then we change the active button to the last button we clicked by doing this. We also need to set a standard button as the active button, so whenever we open our achievement script, one of the buttons has to be active, because else we're gonna get a null reference here when we try to click the active button. So in our start function, we need to say active button equals GameObject.find general button that get component achievement button. And when we've done that, we need to click the button to make sure that we have set the category. So we say active button dot click. So we set the correct category from the beginning, so the general category is shown whenever we open our project. And this is exactly why I use the awake function inside the achievement button, because right now we are calling some functionality from start to make sure that we click our button, and when we click our button we change the sprite around, and to make sure that the sprite has been set before click is called, well, then we do it inside awake. So we say sprite equals get component image here. So we have a reference to the image before we click it. So save your script and jump out in Unity to check if it works. So if we play our game and I click, as you can see, it starts up with the general category here, and I click other, well, then it hides it because there's no achievements inside the other category at the moment. And if I click general, well, then it goes back into the general tab here. So that's the functionality for swapping around the categories. So before we end this part of the tutorial, I would like to test if the scroll rec works. And we can easily do that by just adding a lot of temporary achievements just for testing. So jump back into your script and then go to your start function, because we already have the code here for adding an achievement, and we basically just need to add a lot more. So let's just add like 5 more, 4 more or something, so we have 5 per category. So now we just added 5 of the same achievement to the general category, and we can actually just copy paste this whole thing, make a space here, paste it again, and then change this to the other category. Just copy paste like this. So now we're creating 5 achievements in each category. So if we jump back into Unity and run this, you'll see that we can actually scroll these, but there is a problem. Right now I have selected the general category, and the other category is actually showing up in front of it. So to fix this, I only need to click on this, and now I only have the other category, and you can see that the scroll is working. And if I click on the general, well, then I only have the general, and the scroll is still working. So the scrolling part is working, but we need to fix this little problem we have so that we don't show both categories from the get-go when we do this, because this looks very weird. So to fix this, we actually just need to add a tag to these 2 categories here, so that we within our code can disable both of them from the get-go, and we can make sure that we can show the correct category when we open it up. So we show the general category when we start our game. And the reason that I just can't leave them disabled like this is because it might give us some exceptions, because we have some functionality that tries to say GameObject.find and then find these objects here. For example, inside our code somewhere, I think we had some. As you can see here, inside our set achievement info, we are saying achievement transform that set parent GameObject.find category here. And if these objects are disabled like this, well, then we're gonna get a null reference exception, I am pretty sure. As you can see here, I get a null reference exception because GameObject.find can't find disabled objects. So we need to disable them after we have made sure that all our code has been run for finding all these objects here. So to do that, we need to add a tag to them. So click on the general, go to add tag, and then call it achievement list. Achievement list, just like that. And then you click on the general, go to the tag, select achievement list, do the same for the other, select tag, achievement list. So we need to make sure that these are disabled somewhere in the code after we have looked for them by GameObject.find. And the way we are looking for them is right here. After we created all the achievements, we can safely disable them. So we can make it for each loop, and for each loop is a loop that runs as many times as the collection it gets. So we're gonna make it for each loop that looks for all game objects. Just call it achievement list. So every time this for each loop runs, it finds an item inside this collection we're gonna write here, and every time it finds an item, we can refer to it with this variable name here. So GameObject.find objects with tag achievement list. So now it finds all objects with this tag. So now we are sure that we run through our game world and we find all objects with this tag, and then we just say achievement list that's set active false. So now we disable all our achievement list objects, all the categories, and after that we actually just say, well, active button dot click. So we click our active button, which means that our general category is going to be shown whenever we open up our inventory. So let's save go back to our game, clear it, and then you'll see I only have one category open here because I just hit both of them, and then I call click afterwards to show the general category. So if we do it without maximizing, you see that our other here is disabled, but our general is still enabled because it gets disabled from the get-go, and then we call click, and then it basically gets enabled like this. If I click other, it should disable the other way around. Now it's hard to see the difference because they contain the same achievements for now. We might as well add the functionality for opening and closing the achievement menu right away, so we don't need to come back for that. So if we go into our achievement manager here and make a public public game object called achievement menu, and we're just gonna say achievement menu that set active false, so we hide it from the get-go. So this one is gonna have a reference to the menu in our game, and this line of code sets it to false inside our start function, so when we start our game it gets disabled. And then we want to create a function here, an if statement here inside update. So if my key code, I input that get key down, key code dot I, for example. So if I press I, well, then I want to hide or show my achievement menu. So I can basically just say achievement menu dot set active, achievement menu dot active self, and then make it the opposite. So this function here basically enables and disables the achievement menu, because it says if I press the I button, it says achievement menu dot set active, and it's gonna set it active accordingly to the current state of the achievement menu. So this opposite, or the exclamation mark here, means not active self. So if the achievement menu is active, then it's going to give you a false back, and if it's inactive, then it's going to give you a true back. So we can actually disable and enable it with one line of code. So let's try. If we start our game, our achievement menu should be active. Okay, of course we need to enable it first, or set it. So you need to click on our achievement manager, find the achievement menu here, and drag the achievement menu into this slot, else we're going to get a non-reference, of course. So now the achievement menu has been added, and if we run it now, it's hidden. If I press I, it's showing up. So now I can open and close my achievement menu pretty easily. So that's it for this part of the tutorial. Next we'll start looking at how we can earn these achievements.